Okay, we want to grab our seats. It's 8:30 p.m. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome everyone. A couple quick announcements. In the back there is our big books and CD donation bin. We give away those CDs for free. Help yourself. Please take as many as you want and share them with other people. It's helpful. Also, as of the last, I guess it's like last 2 or 3 months, this group has given away, I think, about 70 plus big books to rehabs. So that's all with your donations and stuff like that. And so it's going to good work, carrying this message in behind treatment walls where a lot of them don't have access to a program of recovery. We have a Facebook page. I guess you guys are pretty much aware of that, but we also have a YouTube channel. So that we've moved into the 21st century finally, and they're online to talk, so you can access them and listen to some of them stuff. There's some great workshops on there and a bunch of things. Be mindful of the kitchen. It's really off limits to us, except for the people that have a commitment making the coffee. The water and all the supplies and things that are in that kitchen are actually the property of the church, so be mindful of that. They let us use this property, and they ask us just be kind and loving and treat it like that. Anyway, with that, we're going to have some fun. We got one of the best chairmen in all of AA tonight, Brian. Let's welcome up here.
Good evening. My name is Brian. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 in Doylestown, PA. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name? Go ahead. Welcome, welcome. Go ahead. Hey, Joshua, welcome.
My name, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, welcome. Awesome. Welcome to everyone. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA?
Hey, I'm an alcoholic in Dave.
Hey, Dave.
And expect the Miracle Clubhouse in Lansdale. Thursdays, 8 o'clock. There's a Joe and Charlie meeting. We're going to be starting a new session starting this week. So if you have never done the Joe and Charlie, come and check it out. Come and check to make sure that what your sponsor is telling you comes out of the book. We'll help you out with that. Thursdays, 8 o'clock. And that's Hancock Street in Lansdale. If you need more info, see me after the meeting.
It's good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you. Hey, go ahead, Mike.
Check, alcoholic. Tomorrow at noon at the Chamonix State Park, CP is having the Unity Picnic. It's from 12 to 5. There's a speaker and a meeting starting at 2.
Awesome. Thank you.
My name's Nick. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Nick.
We have our official Keto Retro t-shirts. They're available free with a $7.50 donation.
Thank you.
Steve, alcoholic.
Hey, Steve.
Next Sunday in July, Washington State Park, 11 to 3, is the Flower Town Center annual picnic.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Steve. A lot going on in AA. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD Donations. If you'd like a CD of any speaker, past or present, see me or any home group member after the meeting. They are available free of charge. And now I'd like to welcome Sherry to read the preamble.
Hi, I'm Sherry, I'm an alcoholic. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denominations, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I've asked Jess to come up and read the AA 12 Steps of Recovery.
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm an alcoholic. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening, as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
The 7th tradition, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, workshops, etc. There's absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group from Mount Laurel, New Jersey, Sahar S.
Hello everybody, my name is Sahar and I'm an alcoholic. Hi everyone. I just want to start off by saying, like, you guys are awesome. I walked in here a little bit nervous. Like, I still have a little bit of this like self-centered fear whenever I'm asked to speak and I'm going somewhere new, and you guys like put me totally at ease. So thank you to the group, and thank you so much, Ron, for asking me to speak. So my sobriety date is June 1st of 2020. I have a sponsor, and I am honored and blessed to be able to sponsor other women today. And I'll just get right into it. So I'm first generation American. My dad was born in Iran and my mom was born in Venezuela, and they came here in the 70s, got pregnant with my older sister, decided to stay here. And the reason why I say that is because they worked so hard to build a life for their children, a life that was better than their own where they were growing up. And so there was this like tremendous amount of pressure to succeed, be somebody, you know, make something out of yourself, right? And I came from a really good household, and what's interesting is, you know, my dad being from Iran, he was Muslim and my mom was Catholic, but I was raised Catholic, and I like to share this because, like, I don't know, as a little girl, I had this like super tight relationship with my higher power. Like, I prayed every night. I loved going to church. I got so much from that relationship with God, and God was like #1 in my life as a little girl. And I have to say, probably like around 10, 11 years old, you know, I was pretty normal. I would have to say, like, before I ever put alcohol in my body, like, there was definitely some like signs. Like, I was you know, I was a thief. I remember being a little kid just stealing. Like, I wasn't raised like that. I just enjoyed stealing. And I also ate food pretty much alcoholically. Like, I would binge, and, you know, it did something for me. It took me outside of myself, and, you know, that worked for me. But I'd have to say, like, around 10, 11 years old, I started to become aware of other people and what other people might be thinking of me, right? I started to realize, like, my name is Sahar. I grew up in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. You know, I look different, like my parents were different, my name was different, and I got picked on and stuff, and I like so desperately wanted to feel a part of. I wanted to feel comfortable in my own skin, and I really didn't feel that way as a little kid. You know, so I started to become obsessed with like fitting in and how can I get this group of people to like me. Like I just wanted to feel loved and accepted, right? And I feel like a lot of us can relate to that. So I'd have to say like probably like 13, 14 years old, I started to realize that I would never feel part of, right? Like my family poured love into me. I had friends that poured love into me, and it was never really enough. So like my fear of not being loved turned into resentment. And, you know, I was like, if I can't join you, then like pretty much, you know, F you, right? And I cut my hair into a foot tall mohawk. I bought a leather jacket and like started listening to like metal and punk rock, and like, you know, I was like, this is great. And in doing that, I found a group of people that, you know, like to listen to the same music I listened to. And there was this guy named Hunter, and he had a foot tall mohawk too, and he told me God wasn't cool. And like in that moment, I was like, all right, you say God's not cool, I'm just gonna throw away my whole relationship with God. Like that's all it took, right? And this was like the most important thing to me as a little kid. And you know, the moment I found out God wasn't cool, I was like, I just sacked that whole relationship. You know, so you know, a lot of you I'm sure can relate to this too. Like I've always enjoyed living a double life, right? Like there was a version of me that I put out into the world, the version that I wanted you guys to see, and then there was who I really was, right? And I actually heard recently in a meeting, somebody said there's 3 versions, right? There's a version of me I put out into the world, there's a version of me who I think I am, and there's who I really am, right? But, you know, I had this double life, right? And I thought like if I just get straight A's, you know, and I'm just happy and I'm friendly to everybody, like that's what matters, right? But inside, like I still couldn't escape this feeling of like just this dis-ease and discomfort. Like I couldn't really describe it. And I met this older guy, I made him my boyfriend. I was like 14 years old, and we decided to run away from home, right? So here I am, 14 years old. I like escape in the middle of the night, and I leave my parents this long letter about I'm going away, I'm never coming back, thank you so much for everything, but I want to go out and live my life now, right? And here I am in New York City, and we get this like homeless guy to buy us alcohol. And, you know, I drank the whole 40 ounce, and like, I don't remember anything that happened that night. I remembered I peed myself, I threw up, I lost a shoe, but like I came to the next day and I was like, that was amazing, you know, like, and I wish I could say like as the years went on, I learned how to drink like a lady, but it was pretty much always that ugly and like that intense and insane. Like I never got better at it really. Like I always blacked out when I drank, but for me it was pretty instantaneous. Like that first time that I got drunk, I was like, this is it, you know, like I got to experience what it felt like to feel nothing at all, you know, and I was really attracted to that. Like if I could just go through life and feel nothing at all, like then I might actually be able to make it. So, and I like to share this story too. So, you know, even though I had pushed God out of my life, this was a really big God moment for me. So I'm getting drunk in an alleyway in New York City, and again, my parents have no idea where I'm at. And my favorite band at the time was a band called Leftover Crack, which was like, you know, kind of concerning for a 14-year-old kid, right? But they were my favorite band, and my parents knew that, and they printed out pictures of my face on a flyer, and they drove all the way from New Jersey to New York on a whim to see if I might be there. And they're walking around this venue, and they're saying, have you seen my daughter? Have you seen my daughter? And they found, you know, 2 junkies in there who had seen me, and I'm getting drunk in this alleyway, and here comes my dad around the corner, you know, and I could have been anywhere in the country, you know, and he found me there. And like the whole way back to New Jersey, I'm kicking and screaming in the back seat. I'm saying, I hate you, you ruined my life, you know, and I'm like just so selfish and self-absorbed. Like I'm not a parent, but I watch a lot of true crime shows and listen to podcasts and stuff, and it's like a parent's worst fear, you know, to not know where their child is. And I was a child, I was 14 years old, and I couldn't put myself in their shoes, right, to understand what I had done to them, like how devastating that must have been, right? So, you know, and I say this was a God moment too, because the guy that I had ran away with, he stayed out on the street, and it was like a couple weeks later, we were planning on taking a cargo train all the way to California. And he's been missing ever since. He's been in no hospital, no jail, like he completely fell off the face of the earth. Nobody knows where he's at, and you know, that could have been me too. So I'm back in New Jersey, and I'm like super sad without my boyfriend, and I hate my life, right? But I learned something really important on that trip when I ran away, and that was that I didn't have to leave the state to escape. Like, I could just get drunk, you know? So I made it my mission. Like, every opportunity that I could find, I would get drunk. And, you know, with this whole double life thing, right? If I got straight A's, if I worked a job, nobody could tell me anything about my drinking. You know, and I started to get into some consequences in high school. I got fired from my first job at 15 years old because they caught me drinking in the parking lot, and the police were called and everything. And, you know, I got put into this like IOP program as an adolescent, and I had to get a clean urine, right? I couldn't drink or use to graduate from this program. It was supposed to be a 10-week program, and I was in there for like the whole school year, you know? And I somehow convinced my mom that they were just keeping me there because they wanted our money. So then she got in this like whole argument with like the staff there, and they were like, you know what, we'll let your daughter go. She doesn't have to come back, right? So like I pretty much kept this up, right? This whole double life thing. I'm working, I'm going to school, I'm drinking, and it's working, you know? Like back then, like getting drunk was a lot of fun, and it did what I wanted it to do, right? Like I said, like I got to experience what it felt like to feel nothing. I wouldn't say like it made me the life of the party, because like every time I got drunk, I was like a liability, not the life of the party. Like, you know, it was really sloppy, and you know, the police were always called, something always happened, but you know, I really enjoyed it even then, even though it wasn't looking pretty already. And miraculously, I graduated high school with a scholarship. And I, you know, that summer when I graduated, I was drinking every single day. I found this guy and his dad would buy alcohol for all of us, and I got drunk every single day. And when my school semester started, I think I made it like 6 weeks into my first semester where I just could not sober up enough to go to class, and I like just threw away that whole scholarship. And, you know, to be honest with you, like at this point, I had already kind of given up on myself. Like I had given up, I had no dreams, no aspirations. I didn't want to go to school, you know, like I just wanted to get drunk. Yeah, and it gets really dark really quick for me. I was thinking on the way here, like I actually never even got drunk at a bar. Like I was seriously trying to get sober since I was 19 years old. Because like my alcoholism took me to these horrible depths really quickly. And basically what that looked like was I crashed 4 cars, I couldn't keep a job, I was living on the streets of Camden, New Jersey, and it got so dark at one point that welfare was willing to put me up in a hotel room and like give me food stamps. All I had to do was show up, and I couldn't show up to welfare to get those things. Like I was like stuck, right? I was stuck, just drunk from the moment I opened my eyes till the moment I went to bed. Like I was just drunk around the clock, you know, and like I started getting warrants out for my arrest, and you know, started going in and out of jail. And you know, here I am, 19 years old, I'm a kid from the suburbs, I'm living on the streets of Camden, and you know, all these horrible things are happening, right? And yet, like you would think, like if I were normal, right, I'd be like, okay, like you know, every time I get drunk, something really traumatic happens to me, I wind up in a police car, and like nobody wants to be around me. Like I should probably slow down or stop, right? And I had that thought happen a couple times. Like I remember going to sleep drunk thinking like, damn, like tomorrow I'm gonna call my parents, you know, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna try this again. But like every morning I'd wake up, like before I even opened my eyes, that obsession of, you know, how am I gonna get the money that I need to get that next bottle, you know, like I was consumed with it. Really quickly I was consumed with alcohol. And long story short, I was 19 years old when I went to my first rehab. I went up to Bergen Regional and all the way North Jersey. And, you know, I honestly thought that in rehab they would teach you how to just drink normally. Like, I didn't think that they were like going to suggest like entire abstinence, you know. So I was like, okay, yeah, like I'll listen to some of the things you guys are saying. Like maybe I need therapy, maybe I just need to cool off a little bit. But when I get out of here, like I'm just going to drink like a lady, even though I've never been able to do that in my life, right? I'm just going to drink like a lady, and I'm going to make this work, right? All I needed was a little bit of break. Like now I'm not suffering with like the DTs and stuff. Like I can go out and I can drink normally. So, you know, within 48 hours of being released from that place, I was drunk again. And, you know, this kept happening over and over again. And I remember, you know, the last time that I was in jail, right, I got picked up, and this was definitely a blessing from God, even though it didn't feel like it at the time. I'm in jail and I'm detoxing from alcohol, and like every day I'm writing myself in my little notebook like how I'm never going to get drunk again. I'm never going to put anything in my body again, and like I'm done with this, right? I've been through so much, I'm in so much pain, I can't imagine going out and drinking again. And I was in there for about 2 months, and while I was in the holding cell waiting to be released, I started to experience like physical symptoms of alcohol withdrawal, which was insane, right? Because it had been several months since I had gotten drunk, but that's how my alcoholic brain works, right? Like without a solution, without a program, my mind is sick, and my mind always takes me back to alcohol. No matter how great the necessity or the wish, right? Like it goes back to alcohol. So I leave this jail cell, and I cash my commissary check in, and I go to the liquor store. And when I was out there on the street, I'll just say, like, there was nothing that I wouldn't sell to get drunk, right? So as soon as I ran out of money, I went and I was looking for a trick, and I meet this guy, and I tell him I just got out of jail. I'm probably like 20 or 21 years old at this point, and he tells me to call my parents and tell them that you just got out of jail, which if anybody's like, I'm sure you're familiar, like conversations like that don't really happen out on the street, So like, I really believe this, like God, my higher power, can use anybody in any circumstance, no matter how dark things may get, to reach you, right? And God used this like strange man to reach me that night. And that's what I did. I called my parents up, and I went to my first recovery house over in Frankfort, Pennsylvania. So my first home group was a Northeast club, and I was like, okay, like I guess I'll get a sponsor, right? And I get this sponsor, and she's like, what are you willing to do to stay sober? And I told her, anything. I'm willing to do anything, right? But the truth was, like, I thought that if I just got sober, like if I just put the alcohol down, that would solve all of my problems. But what I realized, like 2 weeks being sober, I was extremely uncomfortable. I was crawling out of my skin. This like person that I've been running from all those years was just there, right? Like our big book talks about the bedevilments. Like I was prey to misery and depression. Like, I was so, just so uncomfortable, and that's not what I signed up for. Like I thought that was what sobriety was. And when she mentioned like God, like when we got to step 3 and she was like, God, right? God is the answer, God is everything or he's nothing. I'm like, well, that's definitely not going to work for me, because God is for good people and I'm not a good person, So I held on for as long as I could. It was probably like 3 weeks. I got 3 weeks sober, and I wound up drinking, and I got kicked out of that recovery house. And that happened a couple more times. Like I would go into a new recovery house, and this time I'd be just a little bit more willing and open-minded to follow suggestions, right? Like this time I like wouldn't lie to my sponsor, right? Because she would tell me to like read, to pray, to write, and I would always say, yeah, I'm doing those things, and I was never doing those things. So like I was like, okay, I'm not gonna lie to my sponsor as much. But when it came to that God thing, like I just couldn't get myself there, right? Like I really had this belief that if I was going to get sober, it was going to have to be me who was going to get me sober, because like I was totally, God was not going to work for me, right? And I was also really young, and my mentality was like, I'd rather be late to a meeting than show up there with no makeup on, and like I'd be like sitting in a meeting with like a pimple on my chin. I think everybody's thinking about the pimple on my chin, right? Like I was just like really self-absorbed and just still stuck, right? But like alcohol is a great persuader, right? Like I was in and out for a long time, and learning more and more about my powerlessness, and learning more and more that I was doomed. Like I was doomed to an alcoholic death, and I started to get really comfortable with that idea. Like it didn't matter how badly I wanted to stay sober, no matter how I tried to like control it and just not pick up that first one, I always did, right? And it was probably like the 4th recovery house that I was in Philadelphia, and I just got kicked out for drinking, and I'm walking down Kensington Avenue, and I look over to my left and I see this like sign that says AANA, and there's like this guy in this courtyard playing guitar with long hair, no shoes on, and he like looked like Jesus, and he was like really hot, and I was like, I'm gonna go in there. And I go in there and there was a meeting going on. I was like, oh crap. So like I sit down real quick, and I'm like drunk, right? I sit down and I hear this guy, he was talking, he had like 30 days sober, and he could fit his entire life's contents in a single trash bag. And he was talking about how he was sober, he didn't want to drink. And like for some reason, I'm sure I'd heard that many times before in AA, but I really heard him that time. Like, here was a man who drank the way that I drank, right? Who had nothing, just like I had nothing. And he was sober, and he was happy to be sober. You know, that was really attractive to me. So I stayed. I got a sponsor, and you know, we went through the steps. And even though I had been a little bit more willing than I'd ever been before, there were still some things that, you know, some 6 and 7 stuff like I really wasn't willing to work on yet, right? And it wasn't until later that I realized, like, if I was going to stay sober and recover and like be sober and happy, I was going to have to be willing to change all of me, right? And I was really reluctant to that. And I even remember, I remember this the other day, I written out my whole 4th step to go over with the sponsor, and she was like an older woman, and she had to come a couple times to go through my 5th step. I could only like sit down with her for an hour at a time. And we like totally blew over like the sex inventory, and I didn't tell her. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't even tell her that we like skipped that part. Like, we went right into fears. And you know, so here I am sober, like 11 months sober, and I'm sponsoring people, and you know, I have a home group, and I'm in service, but like I'm still shoplifting. You know, I'm still manipulating people. I'm still lying, but I feel better than I've ever felt before, right? Like, I don't know if any of you guys can relate to this, but like, I've been so miserable and sad my whole life that like, even sober, I can get pretty comfortable feeling a little bit of misery all the time, you know? I didn't realize that there was a lot more. I was selling myself short, right? By like being unwilling to work on some of these defects of mine. I was selling myself short for real joy and like peace and real recovery. And, you know, 11 months sober, I move out of that house, and I have a boyfriend, and we get a cat, and I go back to school, and I'm working 2 jobs, and I have all these sponsees, and I'm just doing all this 12-step work, right? Haven't prayed, and God knows when, haven't meditated, like, have not done any sort of inventory since my 4th step. And, you know, and I drink again. I got drunk. And, you know, this time I was out for about 5 months, and during this time, I'm working with my sponsor, and she's like, you know, are you really done this time? And I'm like, yeah. You know, like, it took that relapse for me to really put it all out on the table and like really be willing to give my higher power all of me, right? But I still couldn't stay sober, right? Like, I was getting on my knees and I was asking God to remove my obsession every day. I was going to meetings, I was praying, I was reading my big book, I was following all of her suggestions, and I couldn't stay sober. Like, I would stay sober for about a week, and then I would drink. And I'm telling my sponsor, I'm like, Jen, you know, like, God, I can't feel God. Like, this isn't working, right? But it's funny, because hindsight, like, usually when I'm drinking, I'm not calling my sponsor, I'm not going to AA meetings, I'm not praying, right? So like, even though I couldn't feel God and I still had the obsession, like, God was still working in my life even then, right? And it wasn't until I sat down and did my 5th step with my sponsor that my obsession to drink was finally lifted. Like, there was a lot of stuff, a lot of really shameful things that I had done, you know, things that had happened to me, but especially the things that I had done, right? Like, things that I never thought I would have to say to another person. But I realized, like, after that last relapse, that I had to be willing to let it all go. And I poured it all out on the table, and like, the obsession didn't return. And you know, and like, I go through steps 6 and 7, and you know, I start making some amends, but like, I hate to tell you guys, like, I was still shoplifting, you know, I was still manipulating people, right? And what I realized was, as much as I needed my higher power to relieve me of my alcoholism, I needed his help with all of these other things, right? Like, I was going to need God's help. And I was praying for the willingness, like, God, please help me stop stealing, and I kept stealing. And my sponsor was like, well, it looks like you're going to have to take some corrective measures with this. And I was like, well, what do you mean? You know, because like, every time I would steal, she was like, put a couple extra dollars in the 7 Tradition basket, you know, like, donate something to charity, right? but that's not what was needed. That's not what was called for, right? So I'm like, Jen, what do you mean? And she's like, well, you're gonna have to take that makeup you just stole and bring it back to the store and tell them that you stole it. And I'm like, Jen, like, you know, I have 2 shoplifting charges on my record, like a 3rd one is a mandatory 6 months in jail, right? My life is like finally, like I'm getting my life off the ground and I really didn't want to risk that, right? And she's like, well, Sahar, like, remember when you said you were willing to go to any lengths to stay sober? I said, yeah. And she was like, okay, so how about you sit with this, ask God what you should do about this, right? And God will reveal it to you if you're willing to hear the answer. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm like pleading with God, like, God, do I really have to do this? Like, I swear I will never steal again. Like, I really don't want to do this. And you know, I was like waking up in the middle of the night, not thinking about like, oh, what time is it? I work tomorrow. I was thinking about this like stupid makeup I stole, right? So I was like, okay, like I have to be willing. So I was terrified, right? I was like asking God to remove my fear. God, just help me do this right thing. Help me make this right. And I did. I went to, it was a Whole Foods. I went to Whole Foods and I go up to the cashier and I had the makeup and I said, last time I was in here, I stole this from you guys. And you know, this was wrong. And is there anything else I could do to make it right? Like, here it is. And she said no, right? But that very day, like, I've never had the temptation, the obsession to steal ever again. Like, it was completely lifted, completely. So like that was really powerful for me, you know. I had a belief in my higher power, but this is the point where I really started to develop this like faith, right? That like, if I'm willing, and sometimes that means taking some scary action, right? If I'm willing to do that, like there's nothing that my higher power can't help me with, right? There's nothing that my higher power can't do. So that was really powerful. And, you know, in this time, like I start getting ready to open up a business, right? Like I made amends with my family members, and you know, I hadn't been allowed to live at my house since I was 17 years old because I kept stealing from my parents and my little brother. But here I am with like 3.5 years sober, and my dad and I share a bank account, right? And like he's going on vacation, he showed me how to write his signature so I could pay his bills while him and my mom are away, right? Like this relationship is like, it's beyond anything I could have ever imagined, right? Like God and the program healed that relationship. And I'm getting ready to open up my business, and you know, little by little, like, I guess this is, my friend calls this a spiritual laziness, but that's pretty much what happened, right? I'm like focusing on this business and I'm really stressed out about it, and I'm like dealing with contractors in the city and all this stuff, right? And like little by little, my program starts to kind of take a hit, right? My sponsor's like, hey, Sahar, like you missed our call for step work, like what's going on? I'm like, oh yeah, sorry about that. And you know, like I wasn't really praying and meditating again, you know, like I was not taking daily inventory. I had a ton of sponsees. Like the 12th step is my favorite step. Like I've always like really enjoyed doing 12-step work. But when it came to that like really like nitty gritty, like soul searching, like God searching stuff, like that's always the first thing to go for me. And you know, my sponsor's saying like, Sahar, like if you're not praying and if you're not growing, you're going to pick up again. I would say to her like, well, Jen, you know, like this dude has 20 years sober and he's cheating on his wife. And that guy has 12 sober and he's stealing from Wawa, right? Like if these guys can do that and stay sober, like I think I'll be okay. Like I'm doing all this service work, you know, like that was like my rationale. And, you know, to be honest with you, though, when I look at those guys, it's like, I don't really want what they have. Like, I don't want the program that they work, right? Like, that's not really what I want. But in my mind, I was able to kind of twist it like that. Like, I don't really have to do what I did when I was getting sober to stay sober. You know, things are good now. And I opened up my business, and it was like the best week of my life. Like, I sold out of food every night. You know, my dad and I are high-fiving, we're crying together. We made the cover of the newspaper in my town. It was so awesome. And my first day off of work, I got drunk, you know, and I was like 2 weeks shy of celebrating 4 years sober. And, you know, it happened to me, right? Like, and it wasn't that I woke up that morning and I decided to drink. It was like for several months, I kept making these little decisions to back away from my higher power, which is what keeps me sober, you know? And by doing that, like all these little defects started to creep back in, and it was Sahar running the show again, like living by self-propulsion, you know, just trying to like grind it out and like make this life stuff happen, right? And I drank, and this time it was really bad. Like within 24 hours, I had to be rushed in an ambulance to the hospital, and and I come to, and my husband's there, and my sponsor's there, and there was like this tech at the hospital, like whenever like you go in there for like alcohol or drug related stuff, there's somebody there who like works for like the rehab centers, and he's like, do you need to go to rehab? And I was like, no, I have 4 years sober, I have a sponsor, right? But yet there I am, right? Like that, I am there drunk, right? Obviously, like, I was just so full of it, but this time, like, thank God it was only a 24-hour relapse, but it was just as crushing as like any other relapse, probably more crushing, right? Because I had really experienced God's love. I really experienced recovery. Like I had gone through the steps and I had a spiritual awakening. And I felt just so full of guilt and shame. Like I had to call my sponsees and tell them I couldn't sponsor you anymore, right? And like I had to go to these meetings, and I remember when my home group at the time, like we had our anniversary meeting, right, at the like last Sunday of every month, and this particular meeting was the group's anniversary, so there was like 300 people there, right? And I was supposed to go up there and get my 4-year coin, but I went up there and I got my 30-day coin, and like it was probably one of the most humiliating experiences that I had had in sobriety, and all these people hadn't known that I had relapsed, and they were like, what happened, right? Like things were so good, what happened? And and then like I didn't really have an answer for anybody, like I thought that I was doing all the right things, and I guess that's like the scary part of this disease, right? It's like sometimes like you don't even know when you're kind of distancing yourself away from God and like the program, but my sponsor was there to remind me like you weren't doing these things, right? And like maybe some people can stay sober for multiple years and not work like a great program, but you're not one of them. Like you're an alcoholic of the hopeless variety, and you need God more today than you did when you first came in, right? So I'm working with my sponsor, and we're going through the steps again, and like this time I hate being in AA. Like I could not stand going to a meeting and hearing freaking Mike C talk one more time. Like I thought I was gonna blow my brains out, right? I couldn't feel God. Nothing felt good, fresh, new. I was just so full of guilt and shame, but I just knew, right? Like this was my only hope. Like Alcoholics Anonymous was my only hope. Like and I had been happy and sober before. I knew it was possible. So I kept coming, and I wrote out another 4-step. I made my amends, and it wasn't until I got to the 12th step that I started to feel some relief. Like once I finally got my first sponsee, I got some relief. And it's funny because I was just on a Zoom meeting. I still do Zoom meetings every once in a while. And this new guy was like, how do I get a spiritual experience in 3 days? And I was like, that's a pretty loaded question, And I was like, dude, I don't have the answer for you. I was like, there have been times where, well, first of all, I've had many spiritual experiences, drinking and sober, but he was talking about that like vital spiritual experience, that life-saving one, right? And I was saying, listen, dude, like this time, like I didn't experience that until I had gone through all 12 steps, I was like, there's no way I can translate this to you or give this to you. Like you're just gonna have to do the work, you're just gonna have to seek, and that's what I did, and thank God, right? Thank God I did that, and so yeah, I'm like sponsoring women again, and this time, like sometimes, like yes, relapse is a scary thing, it's a bad thing, and it's not necessary, right? I have a lot of friends in Alcoholics Anonymous who drank the way that I drank, who came in and got sober that first time, and that's wonderful, right? That does not have to be your story. But for me, like I've learned so much through each of my relapses, right? Like I learned, this time around, like there's no such thing as maintaining my sobriety, I have to continue to grow. I have to continue to seek. A lot of people call steps 10, 11, and 12 maintenance steps. I'm like, no, they have to be growing steps for me. Like I have to continue to push myself to do these like scary, radical things for my higher power. And like when I do, right, I feel so close to God, and I feel like so full of life, and and it's so worth it. Like I remember, being really terrified of writing out a 4-step, and, like when I finally like wrote that thing out and shared it with my sponsor, like it was scary, yeah, but like I had never felt, like I felt God, you know what I mean? Like I felt, and not just that, but I had this like feeling inside my gut, like I might actually be okay, right? Like I got that little spark of hope, and it was worth it. And you know, with that scary amends I told you guys about, like if anybody in here has a scary amends they're like really afraid to do, come talk to me after the meeting, because I have like a lot of them were scary. Like I stole a lot from people who didn't know I stole from them, and those were some really scary amends to make, right? But I made them. Like after making one of those amends, I'm like flying out of there. Like I'm like on that pink cloud, and you know, I feel so close to God, even when it doesn't go that well, right? Like even when it's like someone's like, get out of my face, right? I'm like, but I'm doing something today, right? Like I'm about something, I'm doing something, and I feel so close to God, and those experiences are so worth it. So yeah, so I go through the 12 steps again, and you know, this time I'm like, okay, like I'm going to do my 11th step review every night, you know, and I do that. I do my 11th step review every night. I pray and I meditate every morning. You know, just today I did a 10-step with my sponsor because, like I said, that little self-centered fear thing was coming up, and I was like, all these people, I don't know them, you know, I want to do a good job, but I also want to help somebody in the room, right? Like I'm like flip-flopping, so I did a 10-step on it, and like it went away, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that anxiety comes back a little bit, but I was like, no, like I know what I'm coming there to do, right? I'm there to speak my truth, to share with you guys like the miracle that happened in my life by going through the 12 steps, and like share like the power of God, right? So yeah, like I work all 12 steps now, and you know, and life is really good. You know, in these past 2 years, like, yeah, like I have 2 years sober, I had 4 years sober, but like the 2 years I have now, they're freaking great, man. Like life is good. Like I told you guys, I opened a business. Like since then I've opened my second business, you know, and like things are really good with that. And like I got married to somebody, like we lived the last stop together. We were talking to some people outside, like we lived the last stop together 8 years ago, and we like got married, and you know, like we bought a house this year, and like things in that way are really good, right? Materially. But you know, things are also really good, like emotionally and spiritually for me. I have so much love in my life today, and like I can accept and like receive that love and give it to others. You know, it's funny, like even hearing myself talk about this stuff, like when I was new, like I didn't come to AA for that. Like I didn't care about any of that. Like I didn't care about you. I didn't care about like feeling love, giving love. Like I just wanted to stop hurting, man. You know, like I just really wanted to stop hurting. And you know, what I've gotten instead is, yes, I stopped hurting by drinking, right? Like God restored me to sanity in that sense. But, you know, I have a life today that I want to live, I'm excited to live, and like I'm proud to live, you know? So that's like a miracle. And, you know, like I'd said with like the relationships with my family members, you know, my mom and dad, they are getting ready to open up a business, and like they can count on me. We're in the restaurant business, so it's like what we do. We're crazy. Like we just keep opening up restaurants, and it's like you work 7 days a week. And but you know, I'm like able to be there for them, support them, and they can rely on me today, which is like a hell of a lot more than like, you know, you could have said about me just a few years ago. You know, and like life is really good. And since this time too, like I like to talk about this, you know, my sponsor, she took me through the traditions, and she's taking me through the concepts right now. And like, you know, I'm getting involved in like different levels of service in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's given me like a whole new fire and like a wind of excitement for Alcoholics Anonymous. Like I'm just so happy to be a part of it. And I'm like learning so much, and like the learning never stops, like the growing never stops. You know, guys, like I talk really fast, and I feel terrible because there's 17 minutes left. There's a couple more things I want to share with you, but like when inspiration runs out, like I'm sorry, like I don't want to keep talking. But you know, I told you guys all the wonderful things that are happening, right? But there's still some ways that like, you know, like old Sahar comes out, right? Like for example, I had to make amends to one of my sponsees recently. We were supposed to go to this Alcoholics Anonymous event, and you know, that morning she texted me like, hey, when are you picking me up? And I didn't feel like going, so I lied to her. I told her, I have a really bad migraine, I can't take you tonight, I'm so sorry, right? And like this is like before I prayed and meditated, I'm like, turn over on my side of the bed, and I instantly lie, right? And she's like, oh, Sahar, like I requested off of work to go. And instead of telling her the truth, I like I was like, it's a really bad migraine, I'm sorry, like I can't take you, right? And like as the day went on, I started to feel that guilt, right? That guilt, like I knew I had done something wrong, and you know, and I'm telling a couple of my friends about it, like hoping to get some relief from that guilt. And my friend was like, you know, Sahar, like, do you feel better after telling us this? And I was like, honestly, no. And she's like, well, you know, like, this is probably going to require some corrective measures. So I'm like, damn, you know, like I had to make amends to my sponsee. And like all these feelings come up, right? Like I'm so, oh my gosh, she's going to fire me, right? She's going to think I'm a terrible sponsor. She's going to tell all of her recovery housemates that I'm like a piece of crap sponsor, right? But I asked God for the courage, right? I asked God like to help me make this right. And I gave her a call and I told her that I had lied to her. And, you know, the conversation like did not go as I had expected, right? It was actually a really good conversation. But, you know, like I say that with you guys because like there's always, you know, every time I think I'm like at this like spiritual pinnacle and there's like nothing more that, you know, there's no way I could get closer to God, like my humanity comes out, right? And like I make a mistake or I cause harm in some way. And, you know, and I have another opportunity to make it right and in turn grow closer to my higher power, you know? So like that's really beautiful. And before, like I would have just kept lying, like push that stuff under the rug, you know, let all that crap accumulate. You know, and then I have a bottle in my hand again, right? But like instead, when these things come up, like what that 10-step says, right? Like when this dishonesty, this selfishness, resentment, this fear comes up, like I have a way to deal with that, you know? Before there was no way to deal with that. I was just get drunk and try to forget it, you know? And so I really try to practice that today. And like I said, I'm not perfect at it by any means, but, and you know, hopefully maybe with that experience, it actually might have been able to help her out in some way, right? Like, you know, like there's nothing that you do, right, that is too bad, right? Like, and I like to share about this too, right? When I was really nervous to do my 5th step and share with my sponsor some of the things that I had done, like I thought for sure nobody in South Jersey has done the things I've done, right? I thought I was the only one. Nobody's this bad, right? And I shared my 5th step with her and she's like, Sahar, you're the 2nd person to tell me that they've done this. And I was like, really? And God has a sense of humor because I've had 4 sponsees who've done the same exact thing that I've done, you know? And so like whenever I look at a situation in my life and I'm like, that was a really bad situation, right? Is it? Like, I don't know, right? Like if God could take that and like use it as a tool to help somebody else, maybe it was worth it. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's not so bad after all. And I think there's like a lot of things like that. Like the big book says, I'm gonna like quote it horribly, but you know, like our darkest things in our past, or it's somewhere in a vision for you, right? Like God could take that stuff and use it, you know, to help somebody. And I remember being new and hearing that, and I thought that was a load of crap. I was like, you know, like, yeah, right. But there was something about it, right, that kind of stuck with me, and I was like, well, maybe, like, I hate myself, so maybe I don't have to get sober for myself. Like maybe I can get sober so I can be helpful to somebody else someday, right? And like some days that was enough to kind of keep me in my seat and think like, okay, like, you know, like maybe God will have a purpose for all of this pain, this sadness, right? Maybe God can use that because the alternative is, you know, I don't even want to think about the alternative, right? And like that's what Alcoholics Anonymous has given me. It's given me, you know, this opportunity, even in my bad moments, to be of service and to just be this woman, right, that like I've always wanted to be. Like, you know, I always wanted to be a good person. I always wanted to be a good daughter, a good friend, and I just was incapable of that, you know. I was too full of myself. I was too drunk, and, you know, and I was too resentful and just too closed off from you guys. And like, you know, this program has given me the ability to like be that person. So I think that's all I have for you guys tonight. Thank you guys again so much for having me out, and thanks for letting me share. Thanks.
Let's thank Sahar one more time. Thanks. The best speakers in the world end early, right? We have a commitment every Sunday night. This group has at 7 p.m. It's a treatment center, has about 60 patients in it. We need a couple, 2, 3 speakers every Sunday night. So if you're interested, see us after the meeting. And our speakers come here at their own time and expense. It's customary for us to form a line and thank them formally, for coming out and let them know that they do have an impact and an importance part in AA of carrying this message. And when we're done, if you want to help, those chairs only in the front here get thrown up on the rack and hang out afterwards. Help us eat some of them cheese dogs and cronuts and have some fun. Thanks for coming, and we got a nice way of closing if you care to join us. Take a moment of silence, do with it what you like, and if you care to join us, we'll end with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Keep coming back.